I debated the liberal streamer Destiny on live TV, Biden endorses new tax hikes, and TikTokers hilariously fail at economics. All that and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my new daily series where I cover the craziest things on the internet and in our politics from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and tuning in every day at 6 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a returning viewer, don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts as we go along, because I'll pick a few of your comments to read in the next episode. And now, without any further ado, let's catch up on the debate I did with Destiny. So we were on CSPAN, which is this nonprofit network that covers politics. You've probably seen their streams of congressional hearings and Senate testimony and that kind of stuff. We were on their show, Washington Journal, for kind of a panel on social media influencers, one from the center left, one from the center right, talking about the digital ecosystem, the 2024 election, and a whole lot more. Because of the format of it, we ended up talking about our respective careers and the industry a lot, and it wasn't a ton of head-to-head debating. But there were a couple hilarious and interesting moments I want to share with you guys. For one, I don't know if people were like sending their viewers or his haters were coming on here to troll, but a lot of the callers, the interesting thing about the C-SPAN show is that there's callers. People call in and you take their questions live in real time and they can say whatever they want. They're on air. A couple of the callers were like really nasty and just kind of out of pocket towards Destiny.
Good morning. My question is from Mr. Bonarelli. It must be really sad to be banned off of Twitch, and also to like lose your wife as well.
I honestly felt bad for him because people were just taking personal shots at him, and it seemed like not really substantive or anything worth going into. So I did feel bad for him about that. And I was surprised by the savageness of it all. But the most interesting part of this appearance, at least in my opinion, and I'll link to the full thing for anyone who wants to watch it, was when a baby boomer viewer called in and asked us about Gen Z and their darn $10 coffees. And Destiny and I, Destiny's a millennial, I'm Gen Z, we actually had somewhat of an agreement that this person in this narrative, while it might have a grain of truth, is missing a lot.
The young people nowadays, I question whether where they're spending their income. In our day, we didn't spend $1,000 a month on our cell phone or streaming devices. We also didn't use pot or marijuana, and we didn't spend $10 for a coffee drink. I'm just wondering whether these people should be reviewing their cost of living, since that seems to be what they're going to base their vote on this next fall. Don't you think they need to revamp their priorities and stop complaining about spending money at the grocery store?
Yeah, I'll just respond to that one and say two things can be true at once. Gen Z does definitely have some financially irresponsible habits, and sometimes the culture there is not the most responsible culture. But also, things have gotten a lot more expensive, right? Inflation over time, especially in areas like housing, even stuff like grocery prices, has skyrocketed just in the last couple of years. So it is completely fair and reasonable that people are struggling to afford modern life. And there's a little bit too much of a trope going on here in this question of like, well, maybe if they didn't spend all that money on the avocado toast, they could afford a home. Like, there's maybe a little grain of truth in that young people do, make irresponsible decisions sometimes. But frankly, so did your generation back in the day when they were 20, when they were 25. The difference is that things have gotten exponentially more expensive. You look at the cost of college, you look at the cost of housing, and there are complicated reasons that, in my view, for example, we have restrained free market forces that could have brought those costs down, and we've bloated them through regulation and subsidies and all these other things we can unpack. But just say, well, it's the young kids' fault that they can't afford things because they buy too many $10 coffees. I mean, I find that not very compelling. That's the reason the OK Boomer meme exists, because that kind of attitude is so detached from the economic realities that Gen Z is facing and growing up with, which aren't good. And a lot of that isn't their fault.
Yeah, I agree with Brad. He said it nicer than I would, but I mean, yeah, a lot of Gen Z sucks with their money. They're children. I mean, I don't think there were a bunch of financially literate 18-year-olds in the boomer generation or in Gen X or in any generation before or in any generation that's going to come after. I don't think millennials were necessarily the most financially competent people when we became, late teenagers, early 20 somethings as well. And then, like Brad says, I think the world today requires a bit more of a sophisticated mind to navigate it financially coming out of high school. College is basically a requirement now. Things like having a cell phone or having access to the internet are like a requirement for participation in day-to-day life, which in some ways is good. I mean, our standard of living has gotten way and way better. I don't think that for a baby boomer, it would have been a good criticism for a generation or two before you to say, hey, don't you think it's kind of dumb that you're wasting so much money on gas and cars when you could just be walking everywhere or horsing around everywhere? Like, the standards of living have increased. And as the standards of living increase, that might mean people having cell phones or access to the internet or buying expensive coffees at Starbucks. I don't think these are the worst things in the world. And I think we should recognize that the younger generations are feeling a little bit more pressure to make more challenging financial decisions, like at the age of 18, figuring out what they want to do for the rest of their life and whether or not they should be taking on $5,000 of student loan debt or $85,000 of student loan debt to pursue a degree in a job market that they've never participated in before.
Let me know what you guys thought of that exchange in the comments. I thought it was interesting and revealed more of a generational divide than a political one. We did get into some substantive debate, like clashing over Bidenomics at one point. It was really frustrating to me to see Destiny defending Biden's decision to come right into office and spend nearly $2 trillion on the so-called American Rescue Act, which I think is one of the biggest legislative disasters in recent memory.
I agree that presidents have spent a lot. I really wish that we could have like a Democrat come into office that isn't on the heels of a prior economic disaster. It sucks that Obama had to come in and we had to spend our way out of the 2007 housing crisis. It sucks that Biden came in and we had to spend our way out of the COVID crisis. Hopefully one time a Democrat will get in and we won't have to be, doing deficit spending in order to make sure the economy doesn't come into complete collapse because of the administration prior to this. So, yeah.
The economy had actually mostly recovered when Biden took office. The American Rescue Act was entirely unnecessary, right? It funneled trillions more dollars into this after we had already come close to recovering. It just poured more fuel on the fire. So what I was hinting at in that brief snippet is that if you look at the graph of the unemployment rate, we had already vastly recovered, not fully, but largely from the big downturn in employment during the pandemic. We were already moving in the right direction and things were going fine. And then Biden came in and poured all that stimulus money, spending money we didn't have, just deficit spending and printing that money printer. And it fueled inflation, so much so that even many liberal scholars and liberal media outlets have acknowledged that it made inflation worse than it would have been. And moreover, it funneled tons more money into massively wasteful and bloated programs like the expanded unemployment benefits that reduced employment, right? Some people were making more on benefits than they could by going to work. And it was rife with fraud. Hundreds of billions of dollars were lost to fraud in those expanded benefits because they were just giving money out willy-nilly. The legislation also had a huge windfall to state and local governments, got hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars because of COVID revenue drops that never actually happened. It also had hundreds of billions of dollars for public schools to reopen, but there was no actual requirement that they reopen, and much of the money was spent over the next 10 years. And it funneled more money into the wildly inefficient Paycheck Protection Program, which, according to an analysis by an MIT economist, cost taxpayers roughly $200,000 for every single job it preserved, far more than most of those jobs pay. For this part of it, it seemed like Destiny was just defending Biden out of loyalty, honestly, whereas I'm coming at it from somebody who finds both major candidates really repulsive and disagrees with a lot of their agenda, so I'm just calling balls and strikes. But let me know if you'd be interested in me having Destiny on for a long-form conversation about the Biden agenda or other stuff. Don't forget to hit that like button. And now let's talk about President Biden signing on to huge new tax hikes that would affect a majority of Americans. That's right. President Biden just broke one of his biggest campaign promises. That whole thing about how Biden has always promised he wouldn't raise taxes on anybody earning less than $400,000, well, he just totally contradicted that. Biden tweeted from his official account this week, Donald Trump was very proud of his $2 trillion tax cut that overwhelmingly benefited the wealthy and biggest corporations and exploded the federal debt. That tax cut is going to expire, and he says that if he has his way, it will stay expired. So he doesn't want to reauthorize Trump's signature tax cut bill, and he says he's proud of that. But guys, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation, that would mean that 62% of households would see a tax increase if the law were allowed to expire. Whereas making the tax cuts permanent would increase GDP by 0.5% and employment by 686,000 full-time jobs. That said, it would add to the deficit by the scale of $2 to $3 trillion. Now, what their data seems to suggest is that we should take a couple of these tax cuts that have had the most significant economic benefit and ROI and extend those, and I would say maybe we cut spending elsewhere so we're not adding to the debt, or we close some loopholes elsewhere in the tax code. But if Biden does get his way and just lets all the tax cuts expire, that will mean a tax hike for the majority of Americans who did benefit from Trump's tax law. And it would be yet another example of him trampling all over his promises to not raise taxes on anyone earning less than $400K. If you ask me, American households pay plenty in taxes and don't need a tax hike, Mr. President. What do you guys think? Are you on my side, or do you agree with Biden on this one? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button while you're at it. Up next, it's time for DELULU Epidemic, my segment where I call out people who are letting their stupid show. Today, this woke tweet will make you lose brain cells. Have you seen how they treat women and gays in the Middle East? Have you seen how they treat them in Florida and Texas? What in the upside down are y'all talking about? Bruh. I want to know who the 17,000 people are that liked this tweet and what schools they went to so they can get a refund. Many Middle Eastern countries criminalize homosexuality, and some even give gay people the death penalty. And many of them repress women's rights in a way that actually resembles The Handmaid's Tale. You know, the dystopian book and show that liberals love to suggest is what Trump's America would look like. No, babe, that's actually kind of what places like Saudi Arabia look like. I mean, look, you certainly don't have to agree with everything they're doing in Texas and Florida regarding LGBT or abortion. All these things are complicated and they're fully up for debate, and you don't have to agree with them or like them. But if you think that Miami, which hosts huge pride parades, is remotely comparable to the Middle East, or that women in Texas face a similar plight to women in Saudi Arabia, then babe, your DELULU is showing. Alright, well, like and comment with your thoughts on that doozy of a tweet, and now it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my daily segment where I react to the craziest and cringiest ideas going viral on the Clock app. Today, we're watching TikTokers do economics and utterly fail.
Hey, so you know what I don't understand? This is why I don't understand. See this? See this? See that? This. This is worth $50? This is worth $5? This is the exact same piece of plastic. This is the same thing. We made up these arbitrary numbers, and then we said we can't print more or else it'll be worthless. How about just don't let it be worthless? How about just don't tell anybody, or just like don't let it happen? We literally made this up. This is a construct we made up. Just don't let it inflate. Just don't. Like, people, I get inflate, but I don't. Like, just don't let it. You let this happen. You let this happen. How about you just let everything else happen too? Why don't you just let stuff not inflate? Like, just deflate it.
Girl, repent! Repent! I feel like a preacher, and this is my holy book I'm like warding off her demonic influence with. Look, it's one funny video, and she's probably, joking at least a little bit, playing it up for the cameras, though I think she probably does basically believe this. But this whole thing is a widespread attitude on TikTok. Why can't we just run the money printer and go brr and have free everything? They genuinely seem to believe that the government has a magic genie bottle that they can conjure up resources out of thin air. Obviously, currency itself is a social construct. I actually don't disagree with that at all. But when we're trading with currency, it's supposed to represent underlying resources. And if you massively increase the amount of currency, but the actual amount of resources in the economy hasn't changed, well, more dollars chasing the same amount of goods will lead to higher prices. inflating away people's assets and wealth and paycheck, and hurting actually poor people and retirees the most. As far as this idea of just don't let it inflate, you can't really do that because there's not a one person in an office somewhere setting prices for the whole economy. It's decentralized across millions of people's tiny decisions that all affect market prices. Now, the only thing you could possibly maybe try to do is set price controls by the government. The government could, and they have tried this in the past in some places, try to legally mandate that you can only sell eggs for $2 a carton. But what happens then are massive shortages. Because if, say, a bunch of hens get sick and all of a sudden the costs go up and they need to raise the prices, and they would have raised it to $3 or $3.50 or whatever, but they're legally required to sell it for $2, well, they're not going to sell it anyway and just lose money. They're going to not sell it, and there'll be a shortage. All of this is just really basic econ, and I always come back to this. I think we need to mandate and require basic economics and American civics to all be taught at the high school level before you can graduate with a degree, because the level of ignorance on the internet and the degree to which people make these strong pronouncements about things they clearly know nothing about is just out of control. And we've got another video very similar to this one that's making the rounds.
USA is in debt. Everybody's in debt. Why don't we just print more money? And hold on, because I've heard the whole inflation, it'll go up topic. Well, just don't. Just don't make it go up. Just get the printers going. Let's print some more money. Like, what? Aren't we the ones printing money? Hold on. Let me really logically think about this.
Oh,
the trees make
use your
paper,
logic, yeah.
Paper is money. Okay, so we cut down more trees, snip, snip, and we print some more money. The world would be a better place if I was president. No inflation, nothing goes up. We just print more money. We don't just give it away, but we print it and then we're not in debt anymore. Because aren't we like a lot in debt? I'm not stupid.
Oh no, definitely
Like, for
not.
real though. Should I go tell the president? Like, hey, I know we were having some financial problems. I just had a little idea. Print some more money. Isn't it just that simple? I feel like so many world problems are just have really simple solutions. What other, I guess the printers, they cost some money. Maybe labor for whoever's printing the money. I'll print the dang money. And then the trees, the ink. But other than that, hey, we got more money.
So again, we have the same problem that printing more money doesn't increase the amount of resources that you have as a country in your economy. So you just have more money chasing the same amount of resources, and it leads to higher prices, which then hurts the exact same people that you are trying to help. Of course, this sounds ridiculous when you listen to this blonde 20-year-old explain it in her car on TikTok, right? But the crazy thing is that this really isn't that far off from what some far-left economists actually believe and advocate for, and they call it modern monetary theory. They essentially do believe that deficits don't matter. Their theory essentially denies that scarcity exists, and that you can just print money and we can have everything that we want, with maybe inflation as some arbitrary constraint, but they also don't really accept that any of this leads to inflation. So as much as we can laugh at this TikToker, people who genuinely believe this, like Stephanie Kelton is the most famous one, are heralded in liberal media and increasingly taken seriously by many Democratic politicians. That's a lot more disturbing than any TikTok. The other thing about this that's crazy and kind of hilarious is that during the pandemic, we kind of did something similar to this. America's central bank, the Federal Reserve, printed trillions of dollars out of thin air and injected them into the economy. It was supposed to stimulate the economy, but all it really did was stimulate the worst inflation that we've seen in my lifetime. That brutally stretched the budgets of American families and the working class. Even if somebody originally believed in this kind of fairy tale economics, you'd really think that living through the last few years would have helped them wake up by now. But hey, at least it's entertainment for us, I guess. Alright, that's it for today's Brad versus TikTok. Don't forget to hit that like button if you got a kick out of this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Now, before we close it out for today's episode, I'll read a few comments that you guys left on yesterday's episode. One person said, "Leave Spock alone, his ears are great. Nice video, lol." Thank you. I think my ears are great too. Another person said, sorry about so many comments. I just comment as I go along. No, please do that. Spam away. It helps me in the algorithm. But anyway, about your ears, since it was brought up, I'm just curious, but did you have them surgically set back? It does kind of look like that's what happened. Still, doesn't matter. You're gorgeous and have excellent teeth. Oh, thank you. But no, I did not have my ears surgically set back. And guys, it really must be something about the camera angle, because in real life, I don't think any of you would be noticing it like this. Another person said, I always love your videos. We don't always agree, but that's okay. Yeah, it is okay. We need that spirit more again in American life. I love anybody in my audience who's open-minded and will hear me out, even if they ultimately don't agree or have very different values and beliefs than me. Another person said, I love the daily videos, Brad. It gives me something to look forward to. Hard to find moderate commentators like you these days. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm hoping we can build this into a routine. Every day, 6 p.m. Eastern, this will drop. Sorry if it's 15 or 20 minutes late sometimes, like it was yesterday. I had a real hard time exporting the file. But yeah, I'm really excited about this, and so far the episodes are performing pretty well, so. Another person said, you have a face that cartoonists would adore drawing, as you have such expressive features, Brad. Theoretically, you should age very well. Keep up the great work. Yeah, I have always had an extremely expressive face, and I've always been an open book and totally unable to hide what I'm thinking and feeling from showing up on my face, and it used to get me in trouble as a teenager with teachers and coaches who would say something I didn't like, and they could tell on my face and they thought it was disrespectful. But now it serves my career perfectly. So who was really right? Coach. Another person said, I'm a victim of SA. Looking that man in the eyes and telling my story to a panel of jury members was both the hardest thing I've ever done and the most liberating. All I want is to advocate for victims, make orders of protection standard for starters. I was denied mine during the trial, after he was found guilty but not taken to prison yet, and after he was released. Another one is the right to have DNA kits tested. Mine sat in limbo for years until a new DA decided to test it. That being said, this Title IX stuff, horrific and unconditional, while also ignoring issues that actually need to be addressed. I completely agree, and I'm so sorry you went through all that, and I'm so proud of you for getting through all of it with your head held high and coming out on the other side. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my new daily series. Make sure you hit that like button if you got a kick out of the episode. And let's be honest, if you're still here, you must have found something interesting or insightful. So do hit that like button. Please consider commenting with your thoughts, and maybe even consider subscribing and sticking around, or even turning on those bell notifications. And with that, I'll talk to you all tomorrow.